The Mirror's Ledger. In the shadowy corners of London's East End, where cobblestone streets twist like veins through the fog-shrouded remnants of Victorian architecture, there nestled a small coffee shop at the intersection of Whitechapel Road and Brick Lane. It bore no name, only a weathered wooden sign swinging creakily in the night breeze, etched with faded letters. Open from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m., the glow of amber lanterns spilled onto the pavement, casting elongated shadows that seemed to beckon the weary and the restless. This was no ordinary café. It catered to the nocturnal souls, the insomniacs, the wanderers, and perhaps the spirits who refused to rest. Harry, the owner, was a man of 28 with a gaunt, brooding presence. He spoke sparingly, his words doled out like precious rations, communicating mostly through nods and subtle gestures. His dark hair fell unkempt over hollow eyes that held secrets unspoken. Always at his side was an ancient leather-bound ledger, its cover cracked and worn by time. Whenever a patron entered, Harry would silently inscribe their name into its yellowed pages, a ritual as inevitable as the ticking of the broken clock on the wall. No one questioned it. The shop wasn't a place for idle chatter. It was a sanctuary for silence, where one could hear the whisper of wind through cracked windows and the distant wail of the city's underbelly. Mary was one of the few regulars, a 25-year-old graphic designer working in a nearby Shoreditch studio. Her life was a monotonous cycle. Late mornings, early evenings, and nights spent evading the emptiness of her cramped flat. She gravitated to Harry's shop for its eerie tranquility, and particularly the table by the mirror, a grand antique-looking glass mounted on the wall, framed in ornate wood carved with forgotten motifs. From there, she could observe the room without turning. Solitary customers hunched over cooling cups, Harry methodically brewing behind the counter, and the fog-laden street outside, where darkness devoured the lamplight. The first anomaly struck on a chilly autumn evening in late October. The shop was nearly empty, save for an elderly woman muttering to herself in the far corner. Mary settled at her usual spot, ordering a black coffee on ice, and scrolled through her phone. The golden light reflected in the mirror, rendering the space hazy, like a sepia-tinted photograph dusted with age. She glanced up absent-mindedly, and her heart seized. Reflected in the glass, at the table directly behind her, sat a stranger, a man in a dated pinstripe suit, his face pallid and eyes milky white, devoid of pupils. He perched rigidly, hands flat on the table, staring intently at the back of her head. Mary whipped around, but the table was vacant. Just a scarred wooden chair and a thin veil of dust on the surface. Blinking hard, she dismissed it as fatigue or a trick of the light. Yet, peering back into the mirror, he remained, his lips curling into a grotesque smile that bared stained, jagged teeth. From that night onward, Mary became ensnared in obsession. She tried averting her gaze from the mirror, but its magnetic pull was irresistible. Each visit brought the stranger's return, sometimes at another table, other times looming behind the counter beside Harry. One evening, he waved at her through the reflection, his elongated fingers writhing like serpents. Mary began hearing murmurs not from the real world, but echoing from within the glass. Faint ethereal sounds, blending with the howl of wind. Mary, Mary, turn round, Desperation drove her to confront Harry. On a stormy night, when the shop stood deserted except for her, Mary approached the counter. Harry was polishing glasses. The ledger opened before him. "Harry, that mirror. How long has it been there?" she asked, her voice trembling. He lifted his head, his eyes shadowed abysses. He shook his head faintly and resumed his task. Mary's eyes darted to the ledger. Scrawled across the brittle pages were names: John Smith, Elizabeth Turner, Robert Hale, and at the page's end, her own, Mary, dated today, October 12th. Her pulse raced. She furtively flipped back a few pages, horror dawning as she recognized the names. They weren't random. They belonged to the deceased from years past. John Smith, victim of a tube accident in 2015, crushed under a train at Whitechapel Station. Elizabeth Turner, suicide by jumping from Tower Bridge in 2018. Body recovered after days in the Thames. Robert Hale vanished during the 2020 floods in the Docklands, presumed drowned, corpse never found. Were these all former patrons, or did the ledger chronicle something far more sinister? Mary fled homeward, but sleep eluded her. Nightmares plagued her, the man in the mirror emerging, dragging her into a reversed realm where gravity inverted and blood dripped upward from the floor. The next morning, she delved into research. Online archives revealed the shop's dark history. Once a tailor's workshop in the 1880s, It was the site of a gruesome murder in 1888 amid the Ripper's reign of terror. A tailor named Mr. Hargrove, betrayed by his wife's infidelity, slaughtered his family before hanging himself in front of that very mirror. Legends whispered that his spirit lingered, and the leather ledger was his tool for logging clients, but truly, it tallied the cursed, the doomed. Resolved, Mary returned, intent on confrontation. That night, the shop buzzed with unusual activity. Strange patrons filled the seats, their faces ashen, sitting motionless without uttering a word. Harry dutifully noted their names, and Mary realized they matched entries in the death roster. She took her seat by the mirror, staring defiantly into its depths. The man appeared, but not alone. Dozens of spectral figures crowded behind her, reflection-eyes blank voids, mouths stretched in rictus grins. Their whispers swelled. "Join us, Mary. Your name is etched, She spun to Harry. "You know, don't you? What is that ledger? Why is my name there?" For the first time, Harry spoke, his voice a gravelly rasp from beyond the grave. "The ledger doesn't record the living. It lists the dead, but they still come. For this shop is the threshold. The mirror is the gateway. I am merely the keeper." He turned the pages, and Mary saw her name repeated not once, but from 1888, Mary Hargrove's unfaithful wife, slain before the glass. Terror gripped her, but it was too late. In the mirror, the man's hand extended, piercing the surface, seizing her wrist with icy finality like frost from the abyss. She thrashed and screamed, but the shop fell deathly still. The other patrons turned, their eyes milky blanks. Harry snapped the ledger shut, murmuring, "Welcome home." Come morning, the shop resumed its vigil. The table by the mirror lay empty, yet a keen observer might glimpse Mary in the reflection, smiling twistedly, eyes devoid of life. And Harry's ledger bore a fresh entry: "Yours, should you dare cross the threshold."